we're not answering? Is that what we would prefer to do here?
If you would like to mute, you can in between like questions.
I just didn't know if I was like echoing or anything to everyone, so because I don't have any headsets on. So.
Yeah, same.
I'll just mute to be sure.
Yeah, me too.
Cool.
Well, thank you guys all for coming and joining our company sponsor panel for HackViolet. This is one of our main events, and we'd like to encourage everybody to include their questions within the chat, and we're going to address all of the questions that you have for our wonderful panelists that are here. I'd like to say thank you to our panelists for coming and joining us and addressing all the questions that we have. My name's Nikita, and I'm an organizer for HackViolet. I'm here with Mara, who's another organizer for HackViolet. And we're both here as the co-events chairs for the hackathon, so we hope that you guys are enjoying the hackathon so far. But this company sponsor panel is here to answer any questions you have about people who are a little higher up and have a little bit of experience within the technology field and software engineering as well. So we're going to start off by asking all of our panelists to kind of introduce themselves and give us a little bit about the journey that you've taken so far within your industry and what types of steps you have come from.
I'll go first. So I'm Sarah King, and I work for RSM, which is a tax consulting firm that also does IT managed consulting. I am a supervisor there, and I've been here for just over a year now, but I've been in IT for about 20 years. And it's been a long journey, and it's been very different starting out than where I am now, and it'll be a lot of fun to talk about.
Great. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Lisa Penn, and I am with the Estee Lauder companies. And I have actually been at Estee Lauder for almost 21 years now. And like Sarah, my background has not always been in IT, but I've had a pretty diverse journey, I would say. And I've spent the last 10 years in IT at Estee, but was really recruited from the business side and to just bring some business sort of insider to the IT world.
Hey everyone, I'm Brad. I work at Bloomberg. If you're not too familiar with us, think of it like your phone. Our main product is called the Bloomberg Terminal. And except going to like different apps on your phone, it's a piece of software on the computer, and you just type in a 4-letter mnemonic and it takes you to a particular application. Our main clients are like people in like, real estate, the financial industry and stuff like that. But I'm a software engineer there. I graduated from Virginia Tech in 2014 in computer science and moved straight up to New York to work at Bloomberg. And I've basically been there ever since, and it's been a super fun journey so far. So hopefully we can get into that with some of these questions.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for giving us that input on how you've reached where you are right now. We have a question for the panel from Erica. She asks, what would be your advice for someone applying to jobs right now in this weird COVID time?
I'll start off. So I would say if I were in your shoes right now, I wouldn't worry about it unless you're worried about, COVID particular things. For me personally, my work from home experience with COVID has been pretty identical as an engineer doing day-to-day work. But, if you're very interested in particular companies and the qualities that they have as far as like policies, as far, with COVID and stuff, when you're in those interviews, make sure you ask those questions that are important to you. If you think right now, you definitely want to be working from home, then, get confirmation from the company that you're applying to that that's going to happen, because, these are very interesting times, and you want to make sure that you're as comfortable as you can. Starting off a new job is rough in itself, and doing everything remotely, it can add to that as well. So, just keep those things in mind and what's important to you, and make sure you definitely ask those types of questions in your interview to make sure that you'll be happy once you join that company in these times.
Yeah, I would also say, maybe just do a little bit of extra research on companies that you're interested, hop on, to see what types of things they're involved in. I mean, at Estee Lauder, we are still, the majority of us are still working remotely, but we're doing a lot of things like, working with this event. We sponsored our own hackathon, a virtual global hackathon in October. But, I think companies are doing a lot of things outside of the norm right now. So it's a good way to sort of see what's going on and build some relationships.
I want to echo what Lisa said too. Definitely look into the companies, research them a bit. There is a lot out there now with company stances on things that are important to everybody, and culture and diversity is also a huge thing that companies are making statements on. And it's worth it to make sure that not only that you're a good fit for the company, but the company is a good fit for you too.
Yeah, I think that's some great advice, because you always have to look into the culture of the company, and especially for somebody who's just coming straight out of college, that's something that's very important to them. And I think that being a new person who enters, you're not really familiar with what you should be looking for. And I think you guys have some great insight as to what you guys are looking for now, since you've been in the field for a long time. So we're going to move on to another question. So if you could go back and change one thing about your professional career, what would it be?
I can start with this one. Confidence. When I first started out, I did not exude a lot of confidence. I was very shy. I didn't know how to really get myself out there and learn how to build myself up within not only myself, but with the company and those around me. And there's a lot that comes from being able to project that confidence. And if I had learned that when I was younger, I think that would have actually made a huge difference in where I am. Not that I don't love where I am, I absolutely do, but it's because I figured out that confidence and being able to do that in a way that promotes myself, both for myself and for those around me, and helps give confidence to those around me as well. And that's where I get into being able to be in the position that I really love now, is being able to exude that on a level that, gets everybody else's confidence up in you as well.
Yeah, Sarah, I love that so much. And it is so true. And, I think what's so interesting is I didn't mention in the beginning, but I lead employee engagement for our global IT organization at Estee Lauder. And so I am in charge of the internship program. And I mean, the interns that we are getting in our company, they blow me away every day. And, one of our goals is that we really try, it's really a talent pipeline for us. So we really try to offer jobs to at least 80% of our summer interns in IT. And the folks that are coming in have so much zest and oomph and insight and knowledge. I mean, just what you guys are learning right now in school, didn't even exist when I was in school. So you guys have such kind of this leg up that, my advice is just don't stress, and just show what you are learning and what you have learned. And you just will blow people away.
And one last thing I'd like to echo, along with the confidence aspect of it, is don't be afraid to ask questions. And I'm going to speak from personal experience here, especially joining, right after school. I had done 2 internships at 2 separate companies. But going in full time, I was deathly afraid. I was like, ooh, they're going to be expecting so much from me. And I had, all this pressure built up unnecessarily, looking back on it. And one thing that I would say is, just ask questions. They may, very cliche, like, there aren't really dumb questions, right? If you have to ask a question, that's totally okay. Even if you think that, oh, this is a very simple question that anyone should be able to answer. No. If only everyone in our community could just ask questions, we would be so much better off as a community as a whole. So ask questions. Hopefully that'll get you unblocked and unstuck quicker, and it'll help you progress in your career a lot quicker, I think.
I 100% agree with that. I work with a lot of people that are new to the IT industry, and they do have a lot of questions. And I really like it when they do reach out and ask those questions and want to know more, because it shows a technical growth side. We can, hit the side where we get along with everybody and we like what we're doing, but for the professional growth, those questions are always, a plus. From any side of it, you get the answers that you need. The other person knows that you're looking for those answers, and it really shows and produces that confidence too.
Yeah, it is really a sign of intelligence to be able to, have a conversation and be able to ask intelligent questions, whether it's, at Estee Lauder, we are so acronym heavy, and it's like, we don't do something unless we, have an acronym for it. And so sitting in a room, listening to these, you can't know. So if it's as simple as asking, what does that mean, to, asking something about, the project you're working on, it really is, a sign of intelligence that you're really paying attention and, making sure that you sort of have the whole picture.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off that acronym thing. It happens in a lot more places than you would think.
So many.
And when I first joined, people were just casually mentioning all these acronyms. And I was like, why don't I know these? Oh my God, I'm very stupid. No, it's just something that's ingrained after you've been working in a place for a while. It just comes out more naturally. And
everybody has different ones. So you can't expect to go into a new place and know what theirs are.
Yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you guys for that great advice about asking questions and learning how to be confident even from early on in your career. I think that's really important. We can now move on to another question from the chat, from Daisy, asking, how did you find what you love within tech or within the industry that you work in? I know as students, we're interested in a lot of different things all at once, and it's sort of hard to narrow in and decide on one particular field.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. For me personally, I've switched twice. I've been at Bloomberg since 2014. After about 5 years, I worked on the media side of things, building our media website on Bloomberg.com. And then I felt, okay, I feel like I've got a good grasp on the kind of technologies I'm working with, the frameworks and stuff like that. I want to try something else. Try a completely different side of things. So within Bloomberg, it's super easy to be able to progress to another team if you feel bored or you're not challenged with the problems that you're working on, which is nice. And after working on a team for a while, that's kind of expected because you get to know the domain a little bit more and the technologies, and there will be a point where you're not learning as much, and that's okay. So then I decided to go into software infrastructure, completely separate and very different challenges that I'm working on now. And I think it's been a great experience for me. And I don't think you necessarily have to dig into one thing if that's not what you're looking for. On one hand, there are benefits to diving deep into one thing and becoming a technical expert in a very particular area. That's a good thing. It can be a good thing. But if you want to be more broad and learn more different things in different domains and different technologies, you can also be said to be an expert in that as well, and that's okay. So figure out what you're happy with, and if you like it, keep going with it. If not, try something else.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think that's also for the employment question earlier, it's so important to ask potential employers how they deal with movement around in different areas. And when I started at Estee Lauder 21 years ago, I was working for Clinique, and I was developing education programs for all of our Clinique consultants around the world. And I worked on the brand and the retail side for 10 years. And I was actually, as I said, recruited to come into IT for that business, aspect. And And I was a global tech lead for 8 years, and now for the past, year have been leading employee engagement. So, I mean, we really believe, our CIO, Michael Smith, really believes in just, getting that experience and really, learning about other areas. And if there's something you're interested in, you can also find out about different stretch opportunities, within the company. If you have the bandwidth to take on, something, maybe, you're working in one area and software development, but you want to learn more about data and analytics, maybe go to them and say, well, or is there anything you're working on that, you can, get into? So absolutely.
One of the other things when it comes to this question that I love about what I do is that I don't have one thing that I work on when it comes to tech, because in managed services, you work with multiple different types of companies, you work with multiple different types of applications, hardware, software, cloud development, hosting sites and things like that. And so with managed services, I kind of get to dabble in a little bit of all of it. And like over the weekend, last weekend, my director actually called me what I think it was a strong generalist because I can, work on so many different things and I don't have to focus on one thing within tech that I really enjoy. And the other thing that I also really like is, like they said, with RSM, we have the same thing where it's easy to move into a position that is a little bit more specialized, whether it's, development, like software development or networking or anything along those lines. Especially when you start out with managed services, you already have kind of that groundwork to be able to move into something else. Or if you already know what you like, you can get into it. And if it doesn't turn out to be what you want, but there is something else you want to try, we have so many ways of communicating with everybody and getting part of like other projects and being able to move to other teams. And so when you work with companies that kind of do a little bit of all the things that you're interested in, or at least close to, you get to experience that in some way or make contacts with people who do. And that will help, narrow it down if you choose to narrow it down, or like me, keep with more of the general aspect.
I think that's great advice because as students, even being in computer science, which when we came into college, that was something that we thought was very narrowed and specific. But now being in school, a lot of students realize that it's so open-ended and diverse. And hearing that you guys don't like some very specific thing within your field is a lot more comforting for a lot of students because they know that they can move around when they get into the industry. So I'm going to move on to another question. So how do you advocate for yourself personally and professionally?
This one's hard. it's very hard to do. I had talked about being able to exude confidence, and that actually is a way of advocating for yourself. But when you're still new and still starting out, that's extremely hard to do. And so, like we've mentioned, ask questions. Build up that confidence in yourself, because once you build and advocate for yourself by asking those questions, taking notes, continuing education. I know with RSM, we definitely value continued education. We have additional courses and training materials. We also have minimum, education hours we have to get every year. And the more that you put yourself out there, the more comfortable you become with not only talking with people, which is a huge bonus, but being able to connect with others and make those networking connections. But, as you build that confidence, it comes out to everybody else as well. And the more you work on yourself personally, the more you can work on yourself professionally.
And kind of going off that a little bit, I would say, especially in the industry of engineering, software development, becoming an expert in something technically, where somebody could come to you and ask questions, where you become you become that go-to person for something, whether that's again technology or domain expertise, stuff like that. You can definitely advocate for yourself there. Another aspect that I'd like to mention is networking itself. you know, meeting different people that you don't necessarily work with on a daily basis. That can definitely be super helpful. So, you know, there's tech meetup events, you know, in most like tech cities. So going on like meetup.com or just finding through word of mouth. There's various websites you can go to find out more about all kinds of, you know, these events as well. And just meeting new people that, you know, maybe you work with at your company, but they're in a completely separate area, maybe not even in engineering, or also, you know, completely different companies, and just, you know, meet a lot of different people, and then you can get your name out there and what you're known for.
Mhm.
Agree. Yeah. And also, you know, I think just talking to other people, you know, even outside of your company, to sort of understand what other people are doing. I think sometimes like we get so sort of stuck in our bubbles, and we think of like, okay, well, this is what we do, so this is right or this is wrong, and we don't always push. And then you start talking to other people, and you start to learn and hear about, well, what are they doing in at your company or your industry, and it's okay to go back and sort of push the boundaries a little bit, and sort of, I guess, not be so confined within what you're used to, whatever bubble you're used to living in. So, it's okay to shake it up and push to do things a little bit differently.
You'll find too, when you're making those networking connections, that everybody likes to talk about what they do, because it's so different. Like, you hear so many different stories and what people work on and what software they use, or what tools and resources they have. And it's a great way to not only make yourself familiar with what's out there, but also help your company too with being able to help advance them. And part of that networking as well, when you do get into a company, a lot of the times you'll see different groups or gatherings or events that these companies will put together. And for example, we actually have a women in leadership group where you can meet with some of the women partners and directors and be able to learn from them. And there's all kinds of events that are around that. And being able to put yourself out there and make connections with those people not only is, again, a way for you to advocate and build up your own social skills, but to build up your professional skills and your communication skills. And that also provides that networking that you want to have when your name is out there and you start, asking questions about where you want to go with your career and what steps you want to take within your company, and to even see what's available too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those responses. I know a lot of people going into the workforce look for groups such as that at their companies, and I think it's great that you mentioned some of those, and also other ways that you can advocate for yourself. I have another question from the chat now, asking sort of about traits that you see in candidates or coworkers that cause you to really enjoy working with them or want to work with them more in the future.
Yeah, I could start with this one. I mean, I think so we were joking, we say it's like that oomph, what is like that oomph that people have. And we were having this discussion the other day about sort of like when you're hiring people, there's a lot of stuff that you can train people on. I mean, you can teach people how to code, you can teach people, how to write, but you can't really teach people to have this like crazy enthusiasm for, learning, for just like this zest, and I would just say, just working with people who just keep it real. And just, again, like to our other question, just asking questions, and just really have that constant zest for learning, for just always working on different teams, hopping in to jump on different projects, and just really bringing your knowledge to the team.
Yeah. So what I would say, as an interviewer who comes, on campus, who does phone interviews and does in-house interviews and stuff like that, for me personally, what I like the most and what I remember most about candidates is how they interact with me. So being able to have that human side and being able to interact with me on a more, I would say, like human level, just like being able to have a conversation. If I can like easily have a conversation with you, like we're at a bar or something, just very casual talking, that's nice to have. But you still have to have your technical skills that come along with that, and you can show me that you can demonstrate basic technical skills. But being able to see that I could work with you on my team really sets you out from other people that I may interview as well.
Yes, I agree with that too. I'd also say the types of questions that you ask in the interview will help you stand out as well. If you're asking about, how to be more involved with the company, like what kind of things the company has to offer, that lets me know that you have a want to invest yourself into the company. That's a lot better than somebody that, say, would come along and is just there for, definitely ask questions about benefits, but don't make that the sole focus of what you're asking about. You definitely want to make sure that the company is going to be able to take care of you benefits wise, but investing yourself in the company too also tells us that you're wanting to put that extra effort in, and that you're not just there for the paycheck, but that you actually want to be involved.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. The biggest turnoff for me in an interview is, having a great conversation with somebody and then going through, a technical problem or two in an interview, and then getting towards the end and I say, okay, this is your time. You can ask me whatever you want. And then you don't get a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just shows that, we're not on that same level where, even if you don't want to ask me like questions about Bloomberg, if you don't want to ask me questions about living in New York, that's okay. Like you can do whatever. Just show some kind of interest when it's your time to ask questions.
And it's a great time to ask the questions that we've been talking about, right? Like, the employee resource groups that we have. Sarah, you talked about having the women's leadership group. Talking about asking people the movement within their company. Like, there's so many ways to, have that two-way dialogue.
I love those responses. I feel like one of the things that stood out to me was when you use the word zest. And I think that's a perfect way to describe somebody who impersonates everything that you want from an ideal candidate. And I love the theme of asking questions and making sure that you're asking whatever's on your mind and you're not limiting yourself to any sorts of questions, because those are going to set you apart from other people who work with you. So we're moving into a deeper sort of conversation. Have you ever worked for a company that has made a non-ethical decision that has affected you? And how have you handled that situation?
That's a thinker.
I think the most common thing that comes up with what I work on is licensing, like software licensing. And there is a lot of programs out there to be able to use and as tools for, excuse me, cleaning systems and working on systems, or using Microsoft licensing or Adobe licensing. And every now and then you come across those situations where it's just, okay, we've really got to get this person up and running. Do we want to spend the time going through all the procurement and everything else? And the answer is yes, you do, because it's ethical. It's the right thing to do. And I think that's actually what pushed me towards wanting to be in leadership, is because I've seen where people have made the decision not to go the proper route. And it's never worth it in the end, because in the end, it ends up, not only costing the company time and money, but, has big legal implications for the company if you don't get that right. And one of the things that I really wanted to do as part of my leadership is to make sure that I am helping my team make those ethical decisions on a regular basis.
So I actually do have an example. So when I was back in Bloomberg Media, I had gone to like this tech conference, and I got super inspired by these accessibility talks, accessibility in web. And I came back to my team at the time, and I was, I put together like some things that I learned, put in a PowerPoint or whatever, and I was super excited to share it, and it seemed like everyone really liked it. And what I tried to advocate for, instead of putting 100% towards feature and bug development, is to also have a little bit of let's add some accessibility for the users that we have that aren't that you wouldn't necessarily think about as like a super big feature or redesign or something like that. Unfortunately, because of business decisions at the time, we didn't get to work on the accessibility stuff right away. And when you brought up the legal stuff, that brought this into mind, because I remember a year later, because there are laws that do protect a lot of things as far as web accessibility and stuff like that. We had a user that couldn't use our website because of some of the, there were certain accessibility things that weren't there. And looking back on that, I should have got myself to advocate for that a little bit more instead of pushing it off. So that's what I would suggest. When you're in a sort of ethical situation that you feel is right, that you think you should push for a little bit more, maybe you should. And you're not always going to win. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, if you really believe in it and you think that it will make an impact, maybe you'll need to gather a little bit more, business information that may persuade, the business side to do these things. But it's not necessarily impossible. So if you feel like you're in that type of situation, try to keep pushing for what you feel is right.
That's good. That's good advice. And I guess I'll take it a different angle and use an example of sort of on the human resource side. I mean, I'm lucky enough to work for a company that is really so invested in doing the right thing. From everything from the products to the packaging to our people. But pre Estee Lauder, I won't name company names, but I mean, I've definitely seen some really unbelievable, management stuff, and, just have seen people not treated the way that they deserve to be treated. And, I think that, if it doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. And that goes across every, aspect of, just in relationships, for work. And, I just think it's something that has, at least for me, has really shaped, as a leader, how I want to lead. A lot of that comes from, maybe having been treated a certain way in the past. And again, this is, going back, 25, 30 years when, things were very different then. And so just taking that and learning that that's not how I want to treat, people around me and teams. So, that's really sort of what I've experienced.
Thank you guys so much for sharing those experiences and sort of reflecting on your past. They may have forgotten some of it, but we are moving on to another good question from the chat from Alec, who is asking why you have stayed at your respective companies and what do you all love about them that has made you want to stay until now? Yeah,
I'll start off. For me, it's the people. That was the thing that originally attracted me to Bloomberg. I went to the career fairs, the CSRC, and I tried to get a few internships with Bloomberg, didn't get them, but I kept going back every semester, and I made my face be known, and ended up getting the full-time role. So if you're really interested in a company, I would also recommend keep going back to them. Make your face be known. They'll remember you. I see people every semester when I go to the career fairs, and I see the same people. And some of them got in, some of them maybe didn't get in. But if you keep showing your face, I'll remember you, and that's a good thing. That's definitely a good thing. But I've definitely stayed at Bloomberg because of the people, and not just the people that I have on my team. That I really enjoy working with all of them. But all the networking aspects at Bloomberg as well that I get to get involved with, especially in the Bloomberg communities that we have, and being able to go to all these events and externally as well. So
I think for me, so I really lucked in with RSM. I didn't know a whole lot about the company before I started working there. I was put into a position where I needed a new job, and I had interviewed with them, and it was a perfect fit for both myself and for them. And when I got into the position, I got a better chance to look at, who I was working with, who I was working for, the types of company decisions, especially over the past year with the culture and diversity changes that have been going on, and everything that we've been learning about just from news and political movements and things like that. And being able to work with a good group of people that get along really well is a huge bonus. But to see the types of groups like the Women in Leadership, we have a whole culture, diversity, and inclusion team as well that works towards bettering the company, because we're never going to get to perfection. We just always want to keep growing and keep making ourselves better. And seeing that and being a part of all those different ways to help the company improve helps keep me invested. It keeps me loyal to the company, and the fact that, I'm getting to see some of the decisions that I'm being made make changes for everybody else in the company, or I've been able to work on projects with the company that affect multiple different groups. And all these different things together have helped me want to stay with this company for as long as I can. And like I said, we have women leadership as far as the partner level, because we are a partnership. And to me, the more and more I stick around, the more and more I realize that I might want to get to that level as well.
Yeah. So for me, being here for 21 years, for Estee Lauder, we have our Estee Lauder Blue, and this sort of saying is that we bleed blue, and I literally still to this day, like, I still can't believe I work for Estee Lauder. I'm so proud of the company, and just so excited by it. The people, being in a room, with people that, not just like sitting in a room working on a project, but just I learn from my colleagues, every single day. And I learn from the people who are just coming into the company, as we talked about, from my leadership team. And just, really the other things that we've talked about, like having, I feel like I've been able to reinvent myself so many times in this company, and just doing different things. And I love it, because I'm at this point where I'm constantly, in each role that I take, I'm constantly using all of the skills that I've acquired over the years, and putting it to good use in that current role. So it's fun. We have a lot of fun at work. We really put a lot of investment in our people. Whether it's, financial stocks, programs, whether it's training and development, stretch opportunities. If you want to do a global assignment, you can get involved in a global assignment. There's just so much. And I just can't imagine being at any other place. Good question.
Awesome. Kind of going off of that, what Lisa was talking about, I wanted to ask about opportunities for continuous learning that you've been able to direct yourself towards, or that your company has directed you towards over time, and maybe some professional resources that students can keep an eye out for.
Yeah. So I'll start off. So I think there's a couple things. Number one is at Estee Lauder, we all have a LinkedIn Learning account that we use. That's a great resource. I cannot believe the thousands and thousands and thousands of courses that are on LinkedIn Learning. So that's a great option. I am one of the co-chairs of our Women in Technology ERG, our employee resource group. And that's been a really cool way to learn different things. We just actually had an executive coach come and do a session last week. So there's lots of, different ways to get involved and learn. And then I just was asked to join the advisory board of Women Tech Council. And it's just things like that. And I mean, I'm already, thinking, okay, I've just met Sarah and Brad on this panel. So, connecting with them after the session and just keeping in touch and, it's just constant learning, talking to people and seeing what groups. Brad, I loved your suggestion earlier of the meetup.com. I actually wrote that down. It's such a good way, just to always be learning.
So our RSM also does have the LinkedIn Learning accounts. We have an entire internal website dedicated to managing and tracking education experience and continuing education options. I haven't had a chance to really dive into those since I've been here. Again, I've only been with the company for just over a year, but for the past year, I was actually finishing my bachelor's degree. And so I finished that up, which they counted all of that towards my education points and at RSM as well. But we have the LinkedIn Learning, we have other group learning activities, we have events that will come up where we can do things like ITIL training. We have events. Our headquarters is in Iowa, and so you can actually go to Iowa for week-long like Windows trainings or different tech trainings, server trainings. We give, I believe there's bonuses based on certifications and things like that as well. So there are lots of different opportunities for that, both within the company and outside the company that you can bring in your own learning environments too. And just making sure that you're, meeting those requirements, but also actually getting something out of it and spending time on the things that you want to learn.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely would echo that. Don't go to a training just because you feel obligated to. Make sure, your manager may require you to do some training here and there that you don't particularly love, which, that's another conversation. But, go to training that you're going to be super excited about and maybe something that you can bring back to your team and teach them as well. At Bloomberg, one of the really cool things that I like is if you've been at the company for a certain amount of time, they'll actually pay for you to go back to college so you can get your master's, your PhD, and they'll pay for a certain amount of that, which is super cool. One of my friends actually, he isn't in engineering, but he's at Bloomberg and he's on the business side, and they paid for his entire MBA. So that's super cool. But also echoing off of the external things like LinkedIn Learning, there's a website where you can go and read all kinds of books. I've gone on there and found some technical books to read. But also at Bloomberg, we have this, I was talking about our product a little bit. There's a function that you can go to. It's called Bloomberg University. And there's a lot of internal trainings that you can go to as well that are, online. There's some in person where there's an actual instructor, and there's PowerPoint, more traditional kind of learning there. And also within Bloomberg communities, you don't have to necessarily identify in a certain way to go to one of our communities, which is super cool. So I try to stay actively involved in a lot of them. And there's a lot of networking events and lunch and learns that these different communities will host. And just going there and experiencing, maybe nothing about the what's going to happen, but if you're curious, if it piques your curiosity, go check it out, and you may learn some things that you would have never necessarily learned before. So there's a lot of different opportunities for continuing education, and take advantage of them. And if you're really curious, again, ask in the interview about these kinds of things too.
I think that's some really great advice, because being in tech, we're always curious about new things, and you have to be continuously learning in an industry like this. And it's really important that coming out of school, you're familiar with things that can help you do that. So one thing I want to emphasize to viewers, our panelists are here and they have volunteered their time to answer any of your questions. So if anything comes to mind, you can always drop it within the chat and we can answer your question. But moving along, one of the topics that I wanted to address was being a woman within the tech industry, just how it feels, how it's felt differently, and how it's grown over time. And for Brad, how you have been an ally to women that work with you and certain things that you've seen change over time.
Yeah, I'll start off with my side of the question. So as an ally, I would say, I was talking about these different groups that you can get involved with. One of them in my engineering group, my specific engineering group, there's a woman in software infrastructure, in particular in my area, which is called Application Frameworks, which literally just hosts women in our area, which is about 125 people, where we'll do, we'll do all kinds of events. We'll actually do, Bloomberg is super big into philanthropic events. So we'll do like community service together. And I'll meet a lot of people, even though they're in my area, I don't get to necessarily interact with them on a daily basis. So being able to connect with them that way is super cool. And to hear their perspectives and, things that I wouldn't necessarily, I identify as male, but being able to, talk with them specifically about their role and how, they view certain things. It can definitely be enlightening. And within Bloomberg itself, we do have a woman in tech for all of engineering as well. But one thing that I will say about my specific area, that group didn't exist a couple years ago, and an engineer just decided to make it because she really enjoyed she was hanging out with a lot of other women in our engineering area, and she thought it'd be a good idea to also bring in other people as well, have that allyship, formality be there as well to, depend on and have resources that you may not necessarily have access to if this group didn't exist. So I'm very happy to have been involved over the past few years in the women in tech groups specifically.
The women in tech groups are also a great way for you to hear other people's experiences as well and how they've dealt with that and some of the things that, it's like Lisa and I can attest to. It's very different now than what it was 20, 30 years ago. And being able to see those changes is extremely inspiring. It's very hopeful. It means a lot that we're moving towards a direction that gets more women involved in technology and the many, many different fields that there are available. And I think, as hard as it was, maybe 20 years ago to be able to get into the industry and feel respected and to be heard, it's still, a struggle for, I think, anybody new to feel that confidence, especially when you kind of feel singled out. If you feel like maybe you don't fit in, you don't feel like you belong because you're just a bit different than all the people that you're working with. I'm a female in IT, I'm a supervisor, and my entire team is still all men. And so, you do feel a little bit different. You don't feel as comfortable going out to the bars with everybody when they're having their bar night or getting together for things. And so it's more about finding ways to help yourself be included. If you're not comfortable with the environments that maybe they're necessarily, bringing forth, hey, it's Friday night, let's go to the bar, let's hang out. If that's not a comfortable situation for you, come up with a new plan, come up with new ideas and bring those to the table and be your own ally as well. And then having other people in the group like Brad being able to speak up and be like, yes, let's do that. And having that allyship there means a lot to the women that are trying to get their name out there and trying to fit in with the company and fit in with their group and being able to be a part of those situations without being put into an uncomfortable or compromising position.
Yeah, Sarah, I love that you talked about that because, it's interesting. I mean, talking about the bar thing, personally, like I don't want to really be in that situation. And, I actually like my kids. So when work is done, I kind of want to hang out with them, and I mean, having 4, 3 are in college. I got 1 left and I only have a year left with him. So I want to hang with him. I don't, that's what I want to do. And I think in a time where, even now in COVID, outside of tech maybe, but just, having to choose between those types of things and, taking care of your kids and whatever. And I think that's really good advice about, changing it up and coming up with an alternative plan to sort of have those, relationships and bonding and involvement without feeling like, you're sort of letting other things in your life go, which is really goes back to sort of self-advocating, and that's a great way of coming up with something, very different.
Yep. And our time with our families is important for anybody, men, women, anybody that's, got somebody that they want to spend their time with outside, or even just people that want to go hang out with their friends.
Yeah.
Work is work. And if you feel like, having that team meeting, that team building time is important, that can be done during the day too. And you can go and talk to your management about that and just say, hey, I have these obligations at home and I have these responsibilities and I have these things that I want to be able to do. Is it possible that we can, set up a team building thing, but, from like 4 to 5 on a Friday or something along those lines, so that you're still out at 5 o'clock, you're, within the confines of whatever group you're working in, and you're able to still, cut that off at the end of the day. You need to have that time to disconnect and, do the things that you enjoy doing, whether it's, with family or friends or just whatever it is that you do in your evenings or on your weekends, and making that time for yourself.
Yeah, and one thing I want to circle back on, I would say, like, if you're not fortunate enough to have a lot of these groups that we're talking about that offer this allyship or community that you can go to, that's okay. Start advocating for what you're looking for and go to your manager. And if they don't seem to be helping you there, go to their manager. These are more I would say more bigger company problems, right? If somebody's not helping you in a certain area, keep going up until somebody will. I would say hopefully you will find somebody that will advocate for you and will be able to help you and provide support in what you're looking to make, or just what you're looking to get out of that conversation. So if you, again, talking about Lisa and Sarah's experiences with bars and not wanting to be able to go do those, that's okay. Mention these things. Say you're not comfortable in these types of positions, and share how you feel about these situations that you may find yourself in. And more likely than enough, somebody will be there to help figure out some other thing. But if you don't advocate for yourself and you don't tell anyone that it's a problem, no one will ever know. So
right. And you'd be surprised too, like when you go to management about that, it's because they didn't think about it. It's not, out of intent or malice or anything along those lines. It's just that sometimes they just don't understand and they need to have that insight brought to them. And so you'd be surprised how quickly people will be like, oh my gosh, well, thank you for telling me that. We will find a way to make this work. And I've worked for a lot of small companies before I started working for RSM, and they're the same way. They don't have the big company experience. They don't have as many laws and regulations around inclusion. And so they don't think about those things. And so you have to remind them. Like I was at a client site the other day and it was late when we were leaving, and I had to remind my manager that I did not want to walk out by myself. And so, it's reminders of, it's not because they don't care. It's just they don't think about it. And helping bring that to their attention really is how you can advocate for yourself in that manner.
That's awesome. Everything that you guys just mentioned emphasizes to me like how important communication is in every aspect of your life. Even if you're afraid to go to management, they need the people like you to bring those up, because at some point someone had to make those focus groups, someone had to be the person to speak up. And so it's really helpful if you can be that person. And sort of as we're wrapping up here, as a final question, if you guys have any final advice for students who are about to embark on their career in tech, whether that's facing imposter syndrome or some of the issues that we've already mentioned before, just any pieces of advice that you could leave us with.
So in the interview process, when you're interviewing at so many different companies, it can surely be overwhelming. And I totally remember, having like 5 interviews within a couple days. And one thing that I would suggest when you're, interviewing is to ask what's important to you. I know we've talked a little bit about it, but I would like to reiterate that. You should ask whatever is important to you, whatever that may be. It could be something silly, and that's okay. Ask what's important to you and see how these companies, react to those types of questions and, how they answer them and what kinds of things are there to support your question and stuff like that. And make sure that you find a place that you're going to be happiest at, is my advice. There's a lot of good perks for going to, some places. There's good perks for going to different places, but my advice is find the place that'll make you happiest. And then once you are happy in your position and you have found something that you really love, everything else will come along with it, guaranteed.
I would say there is the two sides of, preparedness. Think about what's important to you is an amazing thing to talk about and think about before you go into an interview, but also Google those questions. Google has a ton of resources, or Bing, or whatever search engine you use. What are good interview questions? What types of culture, diversity, and inclusion questions can you ask? And have that stuff ready to go and be prepared. But then also remember that, IT is a learning on the job experience. You can take all the classes that you want to, but until you're in there and you're actually working on the things and you get the experience that you need, everybody's going to expect that you're going to need to ask questions, that you're going to need assistance until you really get in there, because it is very different. Classes are great. You can learn a lot, but there's so much more that you learn by asking questions while you're in there doing it. And the people that have worked in IT, they know that, and they're not going to, look down on you for asking those questions.
Yeah, look, I think your answers were spot on. So, the only thing I would add is get a good night's sleep. So true. Be rested and just, go in and show your oomph.
I just want to say thank you so much for all of your pieces of advice. I've learned so much within the past hour, and I think a lot of people who viewed this probably did as well. And I think it was really insightful how you guys gave pieces of advice about everything coming towards the culture of a company, but also making yourself noticeable within the company that you're working for, and asking questions, not being afraid to do things that are going to make you more confident and make you stand out and happy within the field that you're in. So I just want to say a really big thank you, and I hope that you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. And please, whoever's out there, come join our demo at 7:30, or we're hosting a workshop demo.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. This has been super fun answering all these questions. If you're interested in Bloomberg, feel free to reach out to bloomberg.com/careers. There's a software engineering position on there. You can look more into that, and we have a bunch of information there. But enjoy the rest of your hacking, and can't wait to see what we come up with today.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Bye. Take care.
Bye.